Welcome back to Kill Rock Radio here on killrockradio.com. My name's Rocky. As usual, up in this motherfucker, just trying to keep a conversation going. Info at killrockradio.com is where you would send your comments, unless you want to get up in our DMs, at Kill Rock Radio or / Kill Rock Radio on your favorite social media platform. On this episode, asking Alexandria's Danny Warsnop and Anthrax's Scott Ian have both come out in support of backing tracks during live shows. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, a Trapt update. For those of you who have forgotten Trapt, you are not the only ones. We will talk about that. Before we get into it, I want to do sort of an impromptu review, because we've done the video about Pantera being racist and various videos about the Pantera tour going on right now. And to me, the apex of everything was the show in Dallas, Arlington to be exact, Arlington, Texas. It was, at the big football stadium just outside the city. And it was really what you would have to say are arguably the two greatest heavy metal bands of the last 30 years or so, 30, 40 years. Look at the resumes. Look at the cult following that both these bands have. And Pantera and Metallica. It was something that you would have never thought would have happened, because back in the day, Pantera, they were much more brash. Obviously, Vinny and Dime were there. They were alive. And Phil would go around at live shows and refer to Pantera being the kings of metal. There are those that say that James Hetfield wrote the song King Nothing about Phil Anselmo, lead singer of Pantera. That's not verified. Is it? Maybe? I don't know. But supposedly that song is about him talking about Pantera being the kings of metal. But James is like, oh, by the time y'all were the kings, everything was shitty, so who cares? Where's your crown, King Nothing? So yeah, the thought of those two bands sharing a stage is, it was mind-blowing for somebody like me who grew up in the 90s. So this show, Pantera and Metallica, with Mammoth WVH opening up in Dallas, the hometown, the home base, if you will, of Pantera. It just seemed like the show to be at on this Pantera tour. So I absolutely got tickets, foregoing the Pantera show that happened the night before here in my hometown of Houston, Texas. Dimebag's old lady, Rita Haney, it's what she calls herself. She got up there and sang with the band during Walk and shit like that. From what I've heard, that was a hellacious show. Of course, Pantera has a very rich history in Houston. I've said it before in the past. Pantera, if you're not from Texas and if you haven't really lived in Texas, it's really difficult to understand the folk hero nature of how people look at Pantera. Of course, their whole history runs through Texas, with the Abbott brothers being from Fort Worth. And Dimebag, from a very young age, he would travel the state, fucking winning every guitar competition, just a master shredder from a very early age. The guy was obviously a prodigy. Eventually starts a band with his bro, Vinnie Paul, and those motherfuckers, they worked Texas. A lot of bands, they sort of become regionally famous before they blow up on a huge level, and Pantera were absolutely one of those bands. Originally had a different singer, my boy Terry Glaze, and they had a much more glam style, which was how shit was. People crack on them endlessly for that shit forever. And I get it. They look fucking ridiculous, especially Vinnie Paul. He looks like a goddamn human sausage. But yeah, they looked awful. It doesn't match those dudes. And I think that's why they never got over, because obviously Vinnie Paul, Dimebag Darrell, supremely talented. And if you go back and you listen to those albums, the Terry Glaze albums, there are several standout jams and great Dimebag moments. They were never able to really put it together until they brought in Phil Anselmo. He became the straw that stirred the drink, you know what I'm saying? And really took the shit to the next level. They left all the glam shit behind. They sort of became who they were. there are people who question, which one was the fake persona. Was it the glam guys? Or was it, the tough Southerners? But anyone who's ever been in those dudes' vicinity knows that it's not bullshit. It's not like they were playing characters. That's who those dudes were. That was them finally not giving a fuck, finally not trying to be like anyone else. When you're a young artist, everyone goes through this. In every genre of art, when you're young, you lean very hard on your influences to the point of sometimes being a little bit rip-off-y and shit like that. And Pantera certainly did that. They were into Van Halen. They were into Kiss. They were into Nugent. They were into Sabbath. So as a result, some of that early stuff, they were coming from a derivative place. You know what I'm saying? But they absolutely got it together for Cowboys from Hell. And it was just fucking rocket ship to the moon from there. Those dudes, every time they would come to Texas, it was a happening. Those dudes are legends in this town, in Dallas, in San Antonio, in Austin. There are a million stories about Dimebag Darrell, Vinnie Paul, their exploits, and everything that came with that.
Should we do it Lone Star State style?
And the love of those dudes is so deeply ingrained. When Dimebag Darrell was murdered, it was so fucking random and so out of nowhere. I mean, imagine dying for such a dumb fucking reason because your band broke up and there was a fucking psycho. Pantera, I was going to say had, but has a fucking hardcore cult ass following. And, I always tell the story. It's almost like Fight Club. I remember one time here in Houston, we're only like 40 miles off the coast. So we get a lot of heavy rains, sometimes flooding, shit like that. So I was living out in the country and it flooded like a motherfucker. And finally the waters receded. I was like, what the fuck's open? I'm driving up and down the street. I see this Jack in the Box that's open. I pull into this motherfucker. And, back in those days, I proudly displayed a Pantera sticker in my windshield. And I pulled up and, it's a hell of a thing. If you've never been through a hurricane or a flood, not this pussy shit. I'm talking about a legit ass hurricane. If you've ever been through that, it's harrowing. So I pull up in the Jack in the Box. I order my food. I come up to the front. The fucking guy leans out. He gives me my food. And I ask him, I say, hey man, how much is it? And he fucking rolls up his sleeve. He shows me a Cowboys from Hell tattoo, and he said, you ain't got to pay me nothing, brother. Cowboys from Hell. And I said, fuck yeah. Pulled out into the street. I said, God damn it, I love Pantera. It really is like a weird secret brotherhood. And when you see other Pantera motherfuckers, you give them the nod. Hey, man, what the fuck's up? It really is a weird thing. And when Dime got murdered, and then really when Vinny died, it was sort of like, man, we're never going to fucking see that band again. It really is over. And when this idea came up for the new Pantera lineup featuring Zakk Wylde in the place of Dimebag, Charlie Benante in the place of Vinnie Paul, a lot of people shit on it. There was just really a mountain of shitty negativity that was being pushed on this show. People were trying to bring up shit about Phil Anselmo being racist and the Confederate flag. It seemed like there were a lot of people who were taking like a personal interest in not wanting this tour to go off. And well, you know what? Even if it happened, Phil's voice is fucked. It's not going to be as good without them, without Vinny and Dime. It's not Pantera. Listen, of course it's not Pantera. I mean, it's like, if I go see Paul McCartney play some Beatles songs, it doesn't mean I saw the Beatles. I hear you. But to see the true Pantera, that's impossible now. This is as close as we're going to get. Anybody that knows Zakk Wylde and Charlie Benante knows that those guys were very close to the band, very close to Vinny and Dime themselves, and that if anyone was going to do this in a respectful manner, it was going to be those dudes. And the tour has been a smashing success. Phil Anselmo has fucking behaved himself. Fucking Rex Brown has managed to not die. I heard if this motherfucker drinks even a fucking wine cooler, will kill this son of a bitch. So Rex, keep your shit together. Do not give this motherfucker a sip of booze whatsoever. You could kill him. Then there'd just be Phil, and then it's really not Pantera. You know, even without those guys, it's almost like the fan base never had an opportunity, I guess, to mourn Vinny and Dime. Of course, everybody had their own thing. Oh, everybody has a shot of whiskey or whatever. But in a weird way, I know dickheads will roll their fucking eyes. This was really cathartic to me, man. I will admit there were times where I had fucking tears in my eyes. I didn't openly cry, motherfucker. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It would have been fine. But I did have tears in my eyes because it was so fucking surreal. You could see that it was really emotional for Phil, and it had to have been emotional for Rex. And I know Zach and Charlie have said that they were just like in a haze, like some sort of beautiful fucking haze. And it was, man, it was a love fest. These motherfuckers came out, and the funny thing is, you know, I was concerned going to this show because when a band opens for Metallica, and Metallica's not the only ones to do this. I'm not saying they're assholes for doing this, but what Metallica does is the opener rarely has very good audio. When Metallica comes out, everything sounds crystal fucking clear. You know what I'm saying? There were 100,000 motherfuckers there. So to play a venue that houses that many people, it's impossible to get great audio. But I will say that when Metallica comes out, their audio sounds pretty good. And everybody who comes out before Metallica, their audio is kind of shitty. It's obvious that you're having their shit be lesser so your shit can be cooler. Even though the audio was not as good as what Metallica would have, everybody knew every fucking song. So it was just a giant fucking chant along. It was almost like one of those where you see those like dude retreats where guys dance around a fucking fire and chant and scream about their daddies and shit. It was like that kind of. It just, once again, I understand it's going to sound stupid. I did feel some level of catharsis. You know, I didn't, once again, the fan base was never able to mourn those guys. And in a weird way, it's almost like we finally got that opportunity via just kicking ass. And it was so great to look around and you saw that range of people. There were motherfuckers that were much older than me, all the way down to like kids and shit. And to see the young metalheads with their fucking battle vests on and, head banging and all that shit, you just, you got a real sense of like a circle closing, as dumb as it may sound. It's how I felt. I might have also been emotional because I'd been drinking since lunch. Steady. I'd been fucking throwing down whiskey since lunchtime. Getting fucked up all over the place, dropping gummies as I'm stumbling out of the Uber. And so maybe that's why I was emotional. I don't know. Like I said, a lot of the haters said that Phil Anselmo wouldn't be able to carry the show, but he sounded fucking great. And it wasn't just a scream fest either. If you look at the set list here, we got a New Level, Mouth for War, Strength Beyond Strength, Becoming, I'm Broken, 5 Minutes Alone, This Love, Fucking Hostile, Walk, the Domination / Hollow mashup that they've done from way back in the day, and then finishing up with Cowboys from Hell. It was just a giant love fest, motherfuckers hugging each other, high-fiving, people crying and shit. It was great. I saw no Confederate flags. I did see lots of Texas flags. And there were no incidents other than just a lot of ass kicking, a lot of mosh, and there were a lot of pits opened up during Pantera's set. You could hear that Zach was doing a great fucking job. His presence, that's another thing. It's hard to fill those shoes. Dimebag was such a character, and Zach Wilde can fill those shoes. He has a huge presence. He's a hugely talented guy. He was doing a lot of backup vocals there that I hadn't even really thought about, because Zach Wilde is obviously the vocalist to his band, Black Label Society. So that's almost a whole other element that's been added to this new look Pantera. To me, it sounded like they want to do this again. And assuming everyone lives, I'd love to see this motherfucker again. So yeah, you get a chance to see Pantera, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Go check it out. It is a fantastic time. I give it a 3. If you know, you know. A shout out to all my people that were there. It wasn't just, obviously I had my own party with me, but dude, I had fucking family members out there. I had friends from back in the day. It was like a family reunion, except like 100,000 fucking people. And when the show was over and all those fucking degenerates stumbled out into the streets, you couldn't go anywhere without, it was just packed full of Metallica and Pantera fans. I'm not even going to review the Metallica part, to be honest with you. I was so fucked up. I know Metallica did well. They're always fantastic live. But you know what? Since this show was a 2-night show where there were going to be no songs played twice, that's what Metallica was doing to try to get you to buy both nights of the show. Only issue is, second night, Five Finger Death Punch or the openers, I have no interest in that. So I'd rather just see the one awesome show, let it be what it is. I've already seen Metallica a bunch of times. There's nothing they really could play that I would say, oh, holy shit, this is the shit I've always wanted to hear. But since they were doing such an extended playlist, I got to hear some cool shit. So luckily they only did like maybe 2 songs from the new album. But they did do King Nothing, which I don't know if that was some sort of weird shot at Phil, because that is, like I said, the song that many believe is about him. But Phil was he made a point to say that Metallica are the kings of metal and that it was an honor to share the stage and all that shit. And, you know, the Metallica thing, of course, they were filming this show and they were broadcasting it in movie theaters. It was a huge show. But it took so fucking long for them to come out. They were setting up for well over an hour. By then I was so trashed, and they just came out, and it was good. I remember kicking a lot of ass. There was a lot of really good stuff there, but I just kind of didn't give a fuck anymore. Not to say it wasn't a good show. It's just that was about Pantera to me. Great show. Shout out to everybody who was there. Now, moving on. I got a few stories sent to the email, info@killrockradio.com. I decided to combine them into one thing because they were both about sort of the same thing, which is the use of backing tracks during live shows. For those of you unfamiliar with this argument, as long as there's been recorded media, there's been some dickhead who wants to lip sync over it and pretend like they did it. It's something that's come up on the show recently multiple times. We've talked about Paul Stanley of Kiss doing it. We've talked about Bon Jovi doing it. We've talked about Motley Crue doing it. There's been a big discussion in rock circles about if that is cool or not to be doing that shit at live shows. Is it a ripoff? But now there's been a swell of support for backing tracks from legendary guitarist Scott Ian of Anthrax, one of the big 4 of thrash metal, who's come out in support of it, as well as lead vocalist of Asking Alexandria, Danny Warsnop. Scott Ian, when asked about it, says, really, who cares? You know what I mean? If it's something you don't like, then you have the choice. You have the choice as a consumer to spend your money or not spend your money. And really, that's what it comes down to. So why is there a big deal about it? Honestly, I don't care. You have older motherfuckers like a Scott Ian who they don't know what the fuck's going on. They're afraid to say shit at this point because you can't say anything publicly really without having a good amount of people who come out and say, oh, you're a piece of shit for saying that or whatever. So you could tell that motherfucker is beat. That's why he's just, oh, I don't care. There are no fucking standards left in that man. He has been beat to shit, and this guy just wants to live his life and not be fucked with, which I understand. If you tell me, okay, Motley Crue, okay, guys, they can't really hack it anymore. We're going to do this special, I forgot what they call it, enhanced vocals. We're going to have enhanced everything. Everything's going to be enhanced. Motley Crue enhanced. And if we're acknowledging that the whole thing is bullshit and we're just going there to celebrate Motley Crue with the band and they're going to essentially pretend to do their songs, then that's a different story. If you pay for that, then it is what it is. But if I've been going to Motley Crue shows for fucking 10 years, 20 years, when I buy the tickets to the show, I expect them to play their fucking instruments.
Controversial, I know.
Here's another quote from Scott Ian. He says, "I'm aware that this is something that's going on these days, that the technology has made it possible to do these kinds of things. And my opinion is I really don't care. I don't care what artists do or what bands do to make their show happen. In my opinion, that it's hard out there for bands and artists these days. It's never been tougher. And whatever it takes to get a show on, I think it's all part of the show. This is just new technology that people aren't accepting yet. That's my opinion. It's not new technology. It's lip syncing, dickhead. They've been doing it for a long ass time. Yeah, you know, back in the day, Milli Vanilli, that was the 80s. They were limited by technology, certainly. That CD player skipped. It fucked their whole world up. But that all continued all the way through. Ashley Simpson, her MP3 fucked up. Oh, fuck. Ruined her on national television.
On a Monday, I am waiting. Tuesday, I am there.
It's always gone on. This isn't new technology, dumb fuck. Also, these aren't, it's not like this is some up and coming noise art band or something. We're talking about Kiss. Kiss plays their fucking songs, and Paul Stanley, his job description is singer. And if he can't sing, then what the fuck is he there for?
Smell like a pile of bullshit!
It's clear Scott doesn't even understand what the fuck the question even is. He's talking about new technology. We're not talking about, added shit that gets put in on a live show. Like, I've gone recently to see Code Orange, for example. They have a lot of like weird industrial fucking techno shit that gets pumped in via a keyboard and a fucking sampler and shit like that. Of course, Slipknot has a DJ/sampler dude. It's cool if you're using it almost like as another instrument within the context of a band playing their instruments. I'm talking about washed up motherfuckers or people who use the computer to make their music for them. And Danny Warsnop was very sort of dismissive of it. His comment is, "It's fine. It's obviously become a really hot topic as of late. Ultimately, listen to my band. A great deal of the sounds and instrumentation that you're hearing are not a guitar, a bass, or a drum kit. And very often, none of those other three instruments are playing. So the other sounds, which would be backing tracks and playback and things, if that wasn't going, you're just getting silence. You're just getting 16 or 32 bars of nothing. Just the stage goes, silent for a verse? And then that verse is a cappella now? That's ridiculous."
You dumb bastard.
You also did not get the question. If there are elements of your song that are not, like you said, a bass, a drum kit, a guitar, of course you have that shit in a sampler, you have it in a computer, you have it somewhere where you can trigger it. That's fine. He continues, "The people who complain about it, I would love for them to keep that principle when it comes to albums and be like, don't put anything on an album that you cannot play live. Cool. And I don't mean like nothing you aren't able to perform, nothing you can perform at the same time. If your band has one guitarist, you can't have two guitars going. You can't have the chords going and a guitar solo anymore. You get to pick. You can have one or the other. I don't want to hear vocal harmonies. If all of your band can't fucking sing them, I'm sorry. Take out all the orchestra stuff you have playing. If you aren't going to do it live, but you can't do it on the album either unless you're taking an orchestra on tour every tour.
Shut your goddamn ass up.
Once again, you're taking shit far too literally. First off, this fucking guy acts like it's impossible for somebody to be able to perform an album and have it sound like the album. That's happened for like fucking the entire history of rock all the way up until recently. Led Zeppelin played their fucking songs. The Beatles played their songs. Nirvana played their songs. You know, we just talked about Pantera. Dimebag played rhythm and lead live, and it was fucking flawless. So don't act like it's impossible, numbnuts. You should be able to play your instruments. You should be able to fucking sing your songs. Like, why is this an argument? What the fuck? Where are we at now in terms of where are our heads at, as they say? Like, now it's all of a sudden it's okay. It's okay. Who cares if you fucking lip sync? Can you fucking play your shit or no? Nobody cares. Fuck it. I don't get it. You know, rock and metal production is at a crazy level right now. There's so much layering. There's so much shit that gets put onto a lot of rock and metal albums these days that can't really be replicated live. Where I have an issue is what a lot of the older bands are doing these days, because it is a straight fucking ripoff. Whenever I've talked about Motley Crue, I get messages from motherfuckers who say they've been going to see Motley Crue for 30 years. So 30 years I've been pumping money into your fucking pocket, going to every show, buying every album and all that shit. And now here we are, and you can't play anymore. Father Time is undefeated, obviously. It's not a negative thing to say at this point Motley Crue can't play anymore. It's not saying that they suck. They're elderly men, and they just can't hack it. It happens to everyone. Luckily, they've made a shit ton of money, and they can walk off into the fucking sunset. But instead, there are a bunch of little money-grubbing fucks who refuse to go home. They're charging more than ever. I will guarantee you, if you go to this next round of Motley Crue shows, it will be the most you've ever spent. And when the time comes, they're going to come out, and Vince Neil is not going to be singing his songs, allegedly. Nikki Sixx will not be playing his bass, allegedly. They're saying there's parts of Tommy Lee's set that are not going to be played on drums. So if 3 out of 4 of the band are not playing, they are actively pretending to play, that's a giant fucking ripoff. That's all I'm saying. You can't blame the people for paying. The people want to fucking see you. They love you. More of a reason that you should not rip them off. When you do this, like let's say Bon Jovi, you're charging either your most hardcore fans, you're charging them a premium to watch what will be the shittiest version of you they've ever seen, or you're charging young people who've seen you on YouTube and shit like that. They're like, man, I want to go see Bon Jovi. Yeah, that's why, like, even though there's money to be made, like, maybe leave some of that on the table. Yes, it's cool that a young person gets to go see Bon Jovi and shit like that, but honestly, like, what are they gonna see? What they're gonna see is an old, fucked up version of Bon Jovi that can't even play. Everybody looks like shit. Half the music is piped in. So basically that's what it comes down to. There are bands that are using backing tracks to cover up for the fact that they can't play their shit anymore. There are bands that are adding all this extra shit to their sound to make them sound better than what they actually are. And that's just the simple question. Is it cool? Is it a cool thing to do? Is it a ripoff? I don't know. That's the argument. I would also tell Danny Warsnop, I don't know what shows this guy's been to in his life, but when you go to see these bands, a lot of times they can't recreate the album exactly the way it sounds or anything like that, but that's part of the greatness of going to see a band live. Like I mentioned, Dimebag playing rhythm and lead simultaneously. You say, well, how could he do that? Because the fucking rhythm is running and the solo runs over the top of it. Well, it's called composition. And what you do is you say, okay, on the album I have this, this, and this. How am I going to compose it to where I can present all those main elements for the crowd while still just being one human being? If there's so much shit that you're piling on top of your songs that if you go out without a computer, that means there's going to be entire songs that are just emptiness. Well, fuck, man, maybe you should reconsider what the fuck you're doing. Maybe you've taken it too far. To me, that's an issue with a lot of current metal and rock releases. The production is just choking out any life whatsoever from the music. And then you go see them live. It's like, fuck, man, I just paid to watch you run your fucking computer for real. I'd rather come out and hear a band do a fucking sloppy ass version of their album than have them come out and hit a few buttons and have it sound exactly like the album. If I wanted to hear some shit that sounded exactly like the album, I'd fucking just smoke some weed and sit at home and listen to the fucking album. But instead, I've schlepped myself out into the world. I expect you to perform for me, motherfucker. I don't need to see you just hit a button and sit there with a smug look on your fucking face. Jesus Christ. Anyways, moving on. So I got this story. I don't know if it's a story so much as it's a Trapt update. You all will remember Trapt, the 2000s new metal one-hit wonder, whose song Headstrong, which, dude, that song to me was annoying from day one. But holy shit, for some reason people like that fucking thing. They're a bunch of old fucking men still touring all over the place off the strength of this one piece of shit song. And the last time anyone gave a shit about Trapt was during the pandemic, because these fucking idiots were coming out doing all this anti-vaxxer bullshit. And once Trapt frontman Chris Brown figured out that this was a way to bring PR to his band, he was all up in that shit. He was up Donald Trump's butthole, sucking ass, pandering, and doing whatever it took to try to get some of these fucking idiots to go out to his shows. Because if you're one of these like hardcore far right fuckheads, these motherfuckers have very few options for entertainment because they refuse to be involved with any bands who have views that are not like their own, which makes it a very limited amount of shit they can go see. So when they hear about a band that believes the same dumb shit as them, they're like, fuck yeah, and they'll go out and they'll travel to go see them. But really what they ended up doing was turning everybody else off. And if you ever bring it up to Chris Brown, he'll give you all these fucking stats about how many Spotify fans they have and how many fucking iTunes fans, how many Pandora playlists they're on and shit like that. But you can't argue with the reality when it comes to a live show. To me, that is the greatest metric of how well your band actually does. Every time I see a band sell out a room and I've never heard of them, I go check those motherfuckers out, because obviously there is something going on that they can sell tickets like that. And there's obviously something worth checking out. Trapt is the opposite. They will give you all these stats about how fucking, how popular they are and all that shit. The reality is this. Play. Now that video was posted by Cane Hill vocalist Elijah Witt, who had an online beef with Chris Brown back in the day when he was putting out all his fucking all his crazy bullshit. And for example, just to give you some highlights, it was Elijah Witt who originally said kudos to the whole core scene for ripping Trapt official a new one. Who knew their racism, homophobia, and bigotry would unite such a divided scene? To which Chris Brown gave the standard dumb fuck idiot reply of STFU, you complete beta D bags. Nothing you have done compares to anything I have done. Once again, anyone who uses any of that alpha beta shit, that is a red fucking blinking light. Fuck a flag. It is a blaring siren of a dumb fucking idiot. Anybody who uses that shit. Ladies, the few of you who listen, anyone who gives you any of this alpha beta bullshit, they gotta go, motherfucker, because every one of those motherfuckers are incredibly small inside where it matters. And so, yeah, it had to be pretty sweet How the fuck he ended up at a Trapt show? I'm sure maybe it was in his hometown or something and he was able just to go check it out. But yeah, that must have been pretty sweet, because I guarantee you that Cane Hill, which is Elijah Witt's band, could get more people in a room than that. Dude, recently I've been to goddamn like cover band shows that have packed rooms much deeper than that. That's like a third full. That's what you get for, when like a local band starts trying to charge money. You're used to not having to pay to see these motherfuckers, and now they want $10. All of a sudden, the crowd becomes very sparse. It's one of those deals, except this is theoretically a national level band. Why does anybody still book them? I don't fucking get it. But anyways, thank you very much for sending those stories to me. So next, we're going to go to your comments. Once again, info@killrockradio.com, or hit us up on social media @/killrockradio. We still have been getting a lot of comments about a story we did back in episode 137 about Dave Mustaine. The Megadeth fans always have something to say, so they're still making comments on that story. My boy Elroy says Dave's firing of Dave Elson, but I'm assuming he's talking about Ellefson, is unforgivable. It was just about money. He does not view anyone in his bands as friends. Listen, Elroy, I appreciate what you're saying here, but Dave Ellefson was fired for sending Jack videos to a teenager. Don't get it twisted. Yes, Dave Mustaine hated Dave Ellefson by that point, but he had no excuse to fire him, so he was gonna let it ride. But this was just, he couldn't continue forward with that. On top of it, isn't Dave Mustaine one of these like fucking weirdos who's looking for pedophilia everywhere? I understand people are like, well, she was 19 and all that shit, so it's not pedophilia necessarily. I hear you, but to even be pedophilia adjacent is probably very fucked up to Dave Mustaine. So thank you very much, Elroy. Arsenal says Dave has always been a douche. That's his brand. No surprises. I could stomach him until he went tinfoil hat and went on Alex effing Jones. Now I've got over a dozen albums that just collect dust because I can't unknow that he's lost his effing mind. Listen, Arsenal, you gotta separate the artist from the art, because otherwise you're just punishing yourself. If you've already got the albums, he's already made his money. It doesn't hurt him that you're not listening to that shit. You gotta blast that shit, bang your fucking head, and kick some fucking ass, Arsenal. Anyways, thank you very much. Imperator says this channel sucks. I'm sorry. I'm doing the best I can over here. If you don't like it, it is what it is. I apologize.
You don't like it? Kiss my ass. You don't like it. It's my house.
In a comment about our Beastie Boys story, we were talking about if the Beastie Boys were underrated. My homie J-Joe says it's obvious anti-Semitism. Rap fans can't handle that 3 Jewish punkers were the pioneers of rap. ROFL face, or whatever the fuck that is. Anyways, a lot of people have said that the reason that the Beastie Boys are not considered on the level of some of the other pioneers of rap music is because they're white guys, they're Jewish guys. A lot of that has been said. I don't know enough to really speak on that, but it's gotta be something. I know, like, I've talked to people, one of my buddies who's a big rap fan, he had said he always had heard that the Beastie Boys were like a parody of rap. But it's like, where would you get that from? Like, I know there was always a humorous element to the Beastie Boys, but I don't see how you would get that they were bullshit. You know what I'm saying? But obviously there was something at play there, and that's the question I'm asking. Was it anti-Semitism? Was it racism? I don't fucking know. Was it just the fact that they did have that punk rock base and they were never seen really as rappers because they started as punk rockers? That first album, License to Ill, it had a lot of heavy guitars, full instrumentation. So I don't know if they were viewed necessarily as rap, even though it's obviously rap. I don't know. It's very complex. I don't purport to know what the fucking answer is. That's why I put it out there to y'all. So thank you very much, J. Joe, for your opinion. As controversial as it may be, I saw this comment. It's not really being shown on the video. I don't know if YouTube has a beef with the questioning involved there. I don't know. In regards to our story about Kurt Cobain's comments referring to John Bon Jovi as a desperate, untalented piece of shit, Hugh Morris, my homie Humorous, he says Cobain is clearly joking. ROFL. I can't even believe it was enough to write a story about. Kurt Cobain, if you watch enough of his interviews, you know that he would fuck around a lot and he would just sort of say shit off the cuff. If he thought a band sucked, he wouldn't cover that up. He would just put it out on fucking Front Street. Sometimes bands took him up on it and had beef with him and shit like that, like Guns N' Roses did. But that's just how Kurt was. He just said shit, and I don't know how serious he was. That clip, it does sound like he's just fucking around, but if people took it very serious. I saw some clip posted just today where he was making a joke about jerking off. Like, oh, you know, I showed up at Dave Grohl's friend's studio and I actually just masturbated for 20 minutes. They edited the fucking shit and they released it. Somebody took that like he was literally having them record him masturbating. How much noise could you possibly make masturbating? If you made a lot of noise, you'd be acting. It's like nobody wants to hear like a fake ass porno style performance. If you're masturbating, it should just be like, you know, that gross the fapping sound, and then some, like, you know, nondescript grunt at the end. A little sad sigh. But anyways, next. Back to the Dave Mustaine shit. My homeboy Duncan Distortion says Poland/Young/Ellefson have to cover Dave Mustaine songs because they don't want to survive on food stamps. And that's what I'm saying. If anybody gave a fuck about the Brazilian buttfuck championship music and whatever the fuck Dave Ellefson's trying to put out there or any of that shit, then you wouldn't have to all get together and play Megadeth songs to get people to show the fuck up. Next, my homie Sick Productions says, I remember John Bon Jovi because of my cousin. She got me into rock back in my Nard days. And I sure do remember when Nirvana came out of nowhere, dude. I was 11 and Nirvana music still exists, at least for me. I tune into them all the time. It was more than just music. It was a special time in the music scene. The way everything changed after that, I will never forget that feeling. It hasn't happened since then in the music scene. And, you know, I've always said, unless you were there, you really can't understand how profound it was when Nirvana actually dropped. You know, people will talk about Bleach and shit. Nobody knew about Bleach. Very, very few people bought that album, and even less motherfuckers actually would openly talk about it. It's not like Nirvana was even considered some up-and-coming band or whatever. You know, before Nirvana, like, pop music was just choking the shit out of everything. And we had, like, all the titans were out there. This was the days of Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Mariah Carey, just all the titans, Madonna. Everyone was riding high, just flooding the world with shit. And these fucking, in terms of rock, really all that was there was the husk, the corpse of hair metal, which at this point it was just nothing but bloated bullshit, power ballads and stuff like that. And there was just nothing going on in terms of creativity. And Nirvana showed up. They kicked that fucking door open. And, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know what, actually, really, Pearl Jam technically came out first. Soundgarden technically came out first. But once Nirvana blew up so huge, then all those other bands that had been releasing albums, you know, with varying levels of success, but nobody was setting the world on fire until Nirvana. And I know I always say this when I talk about Nirvana, but what was so insane about Nirvana is it wasn't just that, like, oh man, you know, I used to like this, but now I also like Nirvana. Like nowadays it's okay to say, I love, you know, Britney Spears and Korn or whatever. Nobody judges you for it. But back then, like, Nirvana hit and it was such a fucking thing that you were like embarrassed. I remember before Nirvana hit, I was into like fucking like Boys to Men and shit. And yeah, I still love all that shit. I was a kid. Listen, cut me some fucking slack. I was just a kid, but I was into like Boys to Men and just, you know, pop music. I liked Mariah Carey, fucking Celine Dion, all that shit. And Nirvana was the first band that really kicked the fucking door open for me. I had started flirting with rock music. I had started listening to Metallica because, you know, my cousin was getting into it. So I would hear it through him. And, you know, so I was starting to flirt with it a little bit, but it was Nirvana that really 100% opened my fucking eyes to rock music. I'm right there with you, Sick. It was definitely something you had to be there for to really understand the true magnitude of what it meant to have Nirvana hit. Anyways, thank you all very much for your comments. You can comment on our videos. You can get up in our DMs. You can email us. All that shit. Thank you very much once again. Come on back next time. We will keep this conversation going. Until then, I will talk to you crazy motherfuckers later. Peace.
Got any questions or comments? Send them to info@killrockradio.com. To keep up with the latest and catch up on past interviews and clips, search Kill Rock Radio on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Subscribe to Kill Rock Radio wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm like, oh my God, just listen to it already. Wherever you listen to podcasts.